Balapa Raya Yashoda Nandana Prajajana Nandana. Heart tells louder. I can't hear him. Yashoda Nandana Prajajana Nandana. Tira Yamuna Tira Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Vivajakacharya Astodar Shishi Madniti Lila Vistam Mr. Divine Grace Shalabai Charnar Vinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj ISKCON BBD Founder Acharya Jagadguru Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Amala Parana Paramahamsa Samhita Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Yuga Dharma Harinam Sankirtan Yagna Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Govinda's New York Yatra Dham Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Sri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paskita Deshatarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraye Nastapareshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Srimad Bhagavatam, translation, commentary by His Divine Grace, ISKCON's founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, Canto 3, Chapter 1, questions by Vidura. Today, text 40. Aho, Patapi, Diryate, Ribakarte, Vajarshi, Varyena, Vinapi, Tena, Yas, Tveka, Viro, Dirato, Vijigye, Danur, Dvitya, Kakubas, Chatasra, Aho Pratapi Driyate Ribarkarte Rajarshi Varyena Vinapitena Yastveka Viro Dirato Vijigye Danur Dvitiya Kakubas Chatasra Aho Pratapi Driyate Ribarkarte Rajarshi Varyena Vinapitena Yastveka Viro Dirato Vijigye Danur Dvitya Kakubas Chatashra. All right, please chant.
Aho Pritapi Diryate Rabraska Karte Aho Pritapi Diryate Raja Sri Varyena Vinapitena Raja Sri Varyena Yasta Veka Viro Diryato Vijaye Yasta Veka Viro Vijaye Danur Divyasta Kakubas Chitarsha
Okay.
Aho Pritapi Dviyate Bhakate
Aho Pritapi Dviyate
Rajasi Varyena Vinapitena
Rajasi
O my Lord, Pita Kunti Api also Driyate bears her life. Yes, bears her life. Arbaka Arte, for the sake of fatherless children. Rajarshi, King Pandu, Varyena, the best. Vina Api, without him. Dena, him. Ya, one who. Two, but. Eka, alone. Vira, the warrior. Adirata, commander. Vijagye, could conquer. Danu, the bow. Dvitya, the second. Kakubha, directions. Chatasra, four. Translation. So once again, this is Vidura questioning to Uddhava. O my Lord, is Prita still living? She lived only for the sake of her fatherless children. Otherwise, it was impossible for her to live without King Pandu, who was the greatest commander and who alone conquered the four directions simply with the help of a second bow. Please repeat. O my Lord, is Prita still living?
O my Lord, is Prita still living?
She lived only for the sake of her fatherless children.
She lived only for the sake of her fatherless children.
Otherwise, it was impossible for her to live without King Pandu,
Otherwise, it was impossible for her to live without King Pandu,
who was the greatest commander
who was the greatest commander,
and who alone conquered the four directions
and who alone conquered the four directions,
simply with the help of a second bow.
simply with the help of the second bow.
Purport. A faithful wife cannot live without her lord, small letter L, the husband, and therefore all widows used to voluntarily embrace the burning fire which consumed the dead husband. This system was very common in India because all the wives were chaste and faithful to their husbands. Later on, with the advent of the age of Kali, the wives gradually began to be less adherent to their husbands, and the voluntary embrace of the fire by the widows became a thing of the past. Very recently, the system was abolished, since the voluntary system had become a forcible social custom. When Maharaj Pandu died, both his wives, namely Kunti and Madri, were prepared to embrace the fire. But Madri requested Kunti to live for the sake of the younger children, the 5 Pandavas. This was agreed upon by Kunti at the added request of Vyasadeva. In spite of her great bereavement, Kunti decided to live, not to enjoy life in the absence of her husband, but only to give protection to the children. This incident is referred to here by Vidura because he knew all the facts about his sister-in-law, Kunti Devi. It is understood that Maharaj Pandu was a great warrior and that he alone, with the help of bow and arrow, could conquer the world's 4 directions. In the absence of such a husband, it was almost impossible for Kunti to live on even as a widow, but she had to do it for the sake of the 5 children. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jaina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapidam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Svapadanti Ham. Vandeham Shri Guru Shutapadakammalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vidham Dham Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vidhamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Sarito Pangor Mama Manda Mater Gati Matsarvasva Padambo Jo Radha Madana Mohano Devyad Brindaranya Kolpadrumadha Shrimad Ratnagara Singhasanasto Shrimad Radha Shulagovinda Devo Prestalabi Savyamano Smarahami Shriman Rasa Rasarambi Bamsi Bhattatatasti Taha Karshan Venu Svanar Gopir Gopinatha Sri Estuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Aho Pratapi Driyate Ribarkate Rajarshi Varyena Vinapi Tena Yastveka Viro Dirato Vijagye Danor Dvitya Kakubas Chatasra. O my Lord, is Prita still living? She lived only for the sake of her fatherless children. Otherwise, it was impossible for her to live without King Pandu, who was the greatest commander, who alone conquered the four directions simply with the help of a second bow. You see the fourth canto, part 2, please. So we're approaching the end of the chapter. Vidura is asking exhaustive questions all about the welfare of the Lord and his eternal associates. Similarly, practically at the same time, in Hastinapur, Yudhishthir's capital, present-day New Delhi, Arjuna is returning from Dwarka and reporting the same, the disappearance of Lord Krishna. Uddhava, practically speaking, was the last person, Jara the hunter, the last devotee to see Krishna. And by unprecedented Agyata Sukriti, Maitreya, who was not a pure devotee but had impersonalist leanings, somehow or another was at the site, which is quite extraordinary because this massive carnage had just taken place. Prabhashetra is a holy place, or had been a holy place already at that time, 5,000 years ago, since time immemorial. Yet this great massacre had taken place where there's so many dead bodies and indescribable, horrible sight. And Krishna is resting very nicely under a small banyan tree. The symbolism is that this is a small universe, and his mission here was complete. And Maitreya comes. Actually, a reason given by the acharyas for the, we could say, doesn't hold water, or flimsy reason for Krishna's disappearance is that he was shot in the foot by a hunter. Well, how would a hunter also be on such a scene that there's such great carnage of human beings, and how would he be going about his business? Because a hunter does it for business, shooting a deer. And deer are very timid animals. Are they going to be in such a place at such a time? So these are questions that the atheists who say that Krishna was killed by a hunter and therefore he's an ordinary human being should ask themselves. And more for the devotees who understand that the Lord is creating this ruse, they can understand the Lord's plan. So, in these concluding verses of the chapter, Srila Prabhupada, in the purports, he's describing how the seeming contradictions or inexplicable actions of the Lord are very easy for the devotees to understand, but for the non-devotees, the Lord and his actions are always perplexing and confusing problems. And this is in relation to how is it that the Pandavas and Mother Kunti are seemingly put into such suffering where the evildoers and wrongdoers, Dhritarashtra and his sons headed by Duryodhana, seem to be literally getting away with murder for such a long time. Not to steal the thunder of those who give the class on these next verses, but we'll touch in verse 43. Vidura says, despite his being the Lord and being always willing to relieve the distress of sufferers, he, Krishna, refrained from killing the crews, although they committed all sorts of sins. And although he saw other kings constantly agitating the earth, he, capital H, Krishna, by their strong military movements carried out under the dictation of three kinds of false pride. So, demoniac activity, whether it's 5,000 years ago today or on 5,000 years ago or on July 20th, 2021, it's the same. Or the motivation behind it is the same. They were very proud of three kinds of possessions or pride: wealth, education, and followers. The Lord was just waiting to get them all together on the battlefield of Kurukshetra and kill them all at one time, just to make a shortcut in his killing mission. Godless kings or heads of state, when puffed up by advancement to material wealth, education, which includes science, follow the science, an increase of population, always make a show of military strength and give trouble to the innocent. When Lord Krishna was personally present, there were many such kings all over the world, and thus he arranged for the battle of Kurukshetra. And Krishna, he told Arjuna in chapter 11, universal form, 32 through 34, I have willingly descended on the earth in my capacity of inexorable time in order to decrease the unwanted population. I shall finish all of those who have assembled here except you, the Pandavas. This killing does not wait for you to take part in it. It is already arranged. All will be killed by me. If you want to become famous as the hero of the battlefield and thus enjoy the booty of war, then, O Savyasachi, just become the immediate cause of this killing and take the credit. I've already killed the great warriors Bhishma, Drona, Jayadratha, Karna, and many other great heroes. Do not worry. Fight the battle and be famous as a great hero. As we were saying, practically simultaneously, Arjuna is telling to, or answering, finally answering the the long list of questions by Maharaj Yudhishthira, and you can read there in the first canto that the military strength of the Kauravas was like an insurmountable ocean, which within dwelled in many invincible existences, such as the great warriors and Maharathis listed. Their strength was more than adequate to win the battle, but simply by the presence of Krishna, they could not touch a hair on my head, and I emerged victorious. The Lord always wants to see his devotee as the hero of some episode. What is heroic? Devi overcoming Goliath. The underdog overcoming the seeming, underdog is what's the opposite of an underdog? A proper matchup term. The big monster, the reigning champ. The reigning champ, okay. So, Kali Kali Dam Nam Rup Avatar, our Tuesday translation English to the Shishastakam. Oh my Lord, you have invested all of your transcendental potencies, energies, in your holy names. Krishna comes with his weapons, his generals, Lord Nityananda. The loud shouts of Advaita Charya is sufficient to scare away the faithless atheists, and his associates Srivas Thakur are like his weapons. So, just as, observing the armies, Dhritarashtra, his ascertainment that he would win the battle was seemingly well-founded. Just a bunch of nuts out there wearing bed sheets, chanting only, just repeating the same words over and over again. Ha, ha, ha. We have our big, big buildings. We have our big, big education. We have our big, big this and that. So they can't understand how Krishna and his devotees ultimately emerge victorious. The appearance of the Lord is manifested for the annihilation of the upstarts. Paritranaya sarunam vinashaya tra duskritam. His activities are transcendental, are enacted for the understanding of all persons. Otherwise, since the Lord is transcendental to all material modes, what purpose could he serve in coming to this earth? The activities of the Lord are to be accepted and relished by all living entities. His activities are to attract the ordinary man towards the Lord. The Lord always acts in favor of the devotees. Therefore, ordinary men who are fruitive actors or seekers of salvation may be attracted to the Lord when he acts as a protector of the devotees. The fruitive actors can attain their goals by devotional service, and the salvationists can also attain their goal in life by devotional service to the Lord. The devotees do not want the fruitive results of their work, or shouldn't, nor do they want any kind of salvation. Because he is transcendental to all laws of karma, there is no possibility of his accepting the form of Maya as is forced on the ordinary living entities who are bound by the actions and reactions of their own deeds. The second purpose of his appearance is to annihilate the upstart asuras and to stop the nonsense of atheistic propaganda by less intelligent persons. And what was the main atheistic propaganda that Prabhupada wanted to defeat? We have the book, Life Comes from Life. Defeat these demoniac so-called scientists. Say that life just comes from chemicals. And along with that, by chemicals, we can do so many things according to our demoniac design to material bodies of animals and humans. And this beautiful verse that concludes the chapter in verse 45. "O my friend, please therefore chant the glories of the Lord, who is meant to be glorified in the places of pilgrimage. He is unborn, and yet he appears by his causeless mercy upon the surrendered rulers of all parts of the universe." Just as the Lord in his Vishnu form, accompanied by Garuda, was very pleased to appear in the sacrificial arena of Maharaj Prithu. And so many other kings, Maharaj Nabi in the 5th canto, or sending his exalted Mahabhagavats, as did the Navayogendras in the 11th canto, in the sacrificial arena of, what was the king's name that the Yogendras appeared in the 11th canto? Escapes my memory right now. Only for their interest did he appear in the family of his unalloyed devotees, the Yadus. So today's verse is very nice. Prabhupada describes the glories of faithfulness and chastity of wives to their husbands in the Vedic age. Excuse me. In regards to the seemingly called half-brothers of the main Pandava brothers, who were the sons of Kunti, Yudhishthir, Arjuna, and Bhima. Their father is Yamaraj, Indra, and Vayu, respectively. Nakula and Sahadev, they are the stepbrothers. They are the sons of Madri and, I believe, the Ashvini Kumaras, the father. So, Pandu, Kunti's husband, passed away at an early age, and let's explain here. When Maharaj Pandu died, both his wives, namely Kunti and Madri, were prepared to embrace the fire, But Madri requested Kunti to live for the sake of the younger children, the 5 Pandavas. This was agreed upon by Kunti at the added request of Vyasadeva. In spite of her great bereavement, Kunti decided to live, not to enjoy life in the absence of her husband, but only to give protection to the children. So, in the very long story narrated by Narada Muni to King Prachani Barhi of Paranjana, who was king, and due to his inordinate attachment to women and to enjoyment, material enjoyment, he became himself a woman in the next life. But luckily, she had a very exalted husband, a King Malayadvaj, who not only was a exemplary king and ruler, but was also a Mahabhagavat great devotee. And the whole story of ultimately they're approaching their elder age and they're taking vanaprastha and retiring to the forest and doing everything exemplary, living in such a condition. He passed away, and she is performing the funeral rites. And at the time of her bereavement, the Supersoul, the Lord in his Supersoul form, appears in the guise of a Brahmin who introduces himself to her as her very old friend. And in that section, just prior to Krishna as the Supersoul, as the Brahmin appearing, she is speaking very profound words of bereavement and also in glorification of the exalted position of her departed husband, King Malayadvaj. And Prabhupada relates this directly to what should be the proper feeling of the disciple upon the departure of the spiritual master, especially the spiritual master being an exalted Mahabhagavat. And we as followers and disciples of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, directly relate this to His Divine Grace, how He is the Mahabhagavat devotee who simply by His presence on this planet staves off the influence of the age of Kali and defeats all demoniac propaganda. The Mahabhagavat spiritual master can defeat any and all atheistic conception with his devotional flag unfurled, just like the great king on the battlefield. His flag of his particular, with his particular insignia, is there for all to see. He stands fast against all atheistic ideas, and he makes his disciples similarly strong. So, as Kunti Devi is staying, even though it's described here her bereavement was intolerable, she stayed for the necessary, mandatory purpose of raising the children. So similarly, when the spiritual master, when the Mahabhagavat departs, the disciples, just like we're seeing here, anyone can approach Krishna, the karmis, the salvationists. There's different levels of people who approach Krishna. Krishna is very merciful. Ye yatam mam prapadyante. We should keep this in mind. Prabhupada lecturing on the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj to Lord Nrsingadev in Mayapur in February and March 1976. Krishna is very intelligent. You approach Krishna and you just give him 25%, and he will reciprocate with you 25%. Krishna's not so much seeing what we give, he's seeing what we hold back. But if you give Krishna 100%, then Krishna will give himself to you 100%. The choice is yours. So, the sincere disciples, they should cry when the spiritual master departs, just like the widowed wife. And at that time, they don't perish with the spiritual master, but they should take charge of the spiritual master's mission and execute it properly. We were asked a question on Saturday, what is pure devotional service? And I just replied, pure devotional, and this is the proper answer, Prabhupada has said this, pure devotional service means to follow the instructions of the spiritual master in toto, word for word, without interpretation, without deviation. And Srila Prabhupada himself demonstrated that and pointed that out. Because I accepted the words of my spiritual master in total faith, all this has come about. I came with 40 rupees, I came with nothing, and now 40 rupees is worth 40 crores for the materialists to analyze this. Even Prabhupada has written up in the Guinness Book of World Records of, extraordinary success after the age of 70, list of personalities who, quote unquote, made it big. And if they can't execute the order of the spiritual master, they should be prepared to die with the spiritual master. So, whether one is the loyal wife, the chaste wife of a glorious husband, or whether one is aspiring to be the loyal and chaste disciple of the exalted spiritual master, for one and all, the training is to give up materialistic sense gratification and mental speculation, which are granted functions of the external energy for those who want to pretend or think that they are the enjoyers and the controllers. So the process of devotional service is to achieve pure devotional service, and it necessitates a clearing of these unwanted conceptions of life. Cheto darpana marjanam bhava mahadevagninam. All glories to the Yuga Dharma, which cleanses the heart of all the anarthas accumulated for years and lifetimes together. So, one has to be very strongly self-realized to accept the sati right for a wife to, first she understands, first the husband has to be an exalted personality, and the destination that he achieves must certainly be beyond this realm of repeated birth and death. And the understanding of the wife is that I want to achieve the same destination as he. It's not so much I only want to be with where my lover is and nothing else matters, just like materially attached people when their husband or wife or lover dies. Not like that, but it's based on the rules and regulations of the Vedic system and one's most sincere and humble attempt to adhere to those at all costs. in all times and place. So as Prabhupada makes a statement in the first canto, the whole atmosphere is surcharged with opposition. Just like we're existing here to serve in this Prabhupada Desh of New York, and we're in the very safe confines of Radha Govinda's fort-like temple. And we go outside the door and people are just, well, in a short word, in illusion. So one has to be very sincere, strong, and fixed up to serve here. It's like a double-edged sword. There's great reward if you do what is necessary to keep yourself fit, to get the job done right. But the tendency is, in the material world in general, to seek the more comfortable position. So it's like a filter here. Only the sincere and the strongest can stay. Similarly, in the Lord's devotional service, there's a filtering process going on. Prabhupada said, don't be surprised who leaves, be surprised who stays. So, by the mercy of the spiritual master, who wants everyone who comes to his shelter, on any level, with any motivation, whether they be a fruit of work or a salvationist or whatever, please don't leave, please stay. That is why the mercy of the spiritual master is even greater and more important than the mercy of the Lord. The ignorant perform activities and become attached, but the wise, not wanting to waste valuable time, don't unsettle them unnecessarily. Better to prosecute your own activities silently. But the devotees of the Lord are more merciful than the Lord because they know the inner purpose of the Lord. Therefore, they accept or take all kinds of risks to approach ignorant men, to engage them in the acts of Krishna consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for the human being. Very recently, okay, so I'll just read this and conclude. In another place, it's described that the chaste wife in the Vedic age would feel the burning of fire of separation from her husband as more of a torture than the actual fire going to death. This system was very common in India. Prabhupada says even as late as 1936, he saw such a thing take place, where the chaste wife gladly accepted. So later on, with the advent of the age of Kali, the wives gradually began to be less adherent. In other words, the general faith of everyone across the board, and it became less. So it's not that. It's just the advent of it's just the all-encompassing spreading of the influence of the age of Kali that we live in. And the voluntary embrace of the fire by the widows became a thing of the past. So, adherence to the order of the spiritual master and humble, faithful service to the spiritual master, that's something that doesn't lose its applicability or validity with the advance of the age of Kali. Actually, quite to the contrary, it becomes the only thing that will practically be left. Oh, brothers, the lotus feet of the spiritual master are the only way, Kevala Bhakti, that we can achieve pure devotional service. With one pointed intelligence, Vyasyatmika Buddhir Ekeha Kuru Nandana. All right. Aho patapi driyate riparkate vijarshi varyena vinapitena yastveka viro darato vijigye danordvitya kakubas chatashra. O my Lord, is Prita still living? She lived only for the sake of her fatherless children. Otherwise, it was impossible for her to live without King Pandu, who was the greatest commander and who alone conquered the four directions simply with the help of a second bow. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.